We have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Nina, are you good with things? Do we need a test for it?
Do you have a...
I just started it, if that's cool. Should I wait? I thought we were...
Whatever you want.
Okay.
A little...
Let people tune in.
Oh yeah, and if you please, tweeting is good. We love the live tweeting, but if you'll just make sure to turn the ringer off. Do you want me to run that for the one that's going to go 75 or 45?
Just remember, you're going international on the World Wide Web.
This is big. We already had viewers like 2 hours ago. People were on the live stream.
Welcome to Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series for PSC District 4. This is a debate. Good evening. I'm Annette Sosa, a reporter for All News 106.7, and we'd like to welcome our viewers and our live audience to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series originating from the Commerce Club in downtown Atlanta. Now, this debate is between the Republican candidates running for Georgia's Public Service Commission in District 4. Public Service Commission oversees telecommunications, electric, and gas services in the state. The 4th District covers northern and eastern Georgia. Now, let's meet the candidates. They are in alphabetical order. Doug Kidd, an attorney for Livonia, focusing on civil litigation for small businesses. He is a past president of the Northern Circuit Bar Association. Welcome. Craig Lutz is a Hall County Commissioner. He has also served as a Flowery Branch City Council member and Mayor Pro Tem. And incumbent Lauren Bubba McDonald. Bubba served 20 years as a state representative. He has served on the PSC since 1988. And let's meet our panelists. Margaret Euchre is an award-winning reporter for Bloomberg News. Jonathan Shapiro, a reporter for WABE covering government, local, and state politics. And Dave Williams is a staff writer for the Atlanta Business Chronicle. And tonight's debate will consist of 3 rounds. For more information on the rules of each round, please visit the Atlanta Press Club at www.atlantapressclub.org. Now, let's get started. In the first round, each candidate will be asked one question, one by one of the journalists. Candidates have 60 seconds to answer the question. Dave Williams, you get the first question. To Craig.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Lutz.
Good evening.
Georgia Power Company issued a request for proposals earlier this month for the development of 495 megawatts of solar power generation to go online next year and in 2016. Now that's the most ambitious solar energy initiative in the utility's history, yet some out there are calling on the company to do more. What do you think?
I believe that we should be taking a scientific and economically principled approach to how we put energy into our system. Taking a look at the mandate that was passed last year for 525 megawatts of power, I don't believe that that mandate was good for Georgians because we already have an excess of power in Georgia, and the power that they're bringing online is more than twice as expensive as the current power we have today. I think what we need to do going forward is make sure that we apply sound economic principles first, make sure that the power we're bringing on has great scientific basis behind it, and therefore we'll be able to keep prices down for Georgians in the future.
Thank you. Margaret Newkirk, you get the next question to Bubba McDonald.
Along the same lines, why have you become an advocate for developing solar power in Georgia? And could you respond to the mandate language related to it?
First off, a little correction. 98 was when I came on the commission, not 88. But anyway, Georgia, our solar initiative is not a mandate. The integrated resource plan, which is presented to the commission by law, by the power company, sets the agenda for generation for the next 20 years. I introduced 525 megawatts of solar power into that integrated resource plan. It was adopted by the commission. It was endorsed by the power company. And it right now leads the United States in the solar development, #1 in the nation in solar development. Tom Fanning says we have the largest volunteer solar program in the nation today. So with that said, and this is done without any subsidies, without any upward pressure on the ratepayer, what it does is below the levelized avoided cost for power in our state.
Thank you. Jonathan Shapiro, final question for Doug Kidd.
Through this campaign, you've referenced the war on coal. Legal experts say that the Obama administration's efforts to use the Clean Air Act to curb pollution from coal plants will likely pass muster in the courts. Just today, the Supreme Court upheld EPA's authority to regulate coal plant pollution across the state lines. It was a 6-2 ruling today. This summer, we're expecting EPA to propose new tougher emission standards for existing coal plants. What can and should Georgia be doing that's not doing right now to prepare for those new emission standards?
Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to take a look at that new court opinion, but you are right. The federal government does have the ability to regulate coal. Unfortunately, it's regulating it in such a way now that's detrimental to average Georgians. Coal is fairly cheap, fairly plentiful, and it's been proven. We've used it for more than 100 years to produce our electricity. If it were up to me, I would use coal. I know it has some pollution effects, but I think right now with people struggling to pay their bills, they need the cheapest electricity possible, and I believe coal would be the way to do that. However, you are correct. The federal government has been waging a war on coal, and unfortunately, there's not much the state can do about it because of the supremacy clause of the Constitution. If the federal government wants to do something, the state is pretty much handcuffed to do it. I think what we've been doing is transforming away from coal to natural gas, which makes sense right now because natural gas is plentiful, and we're exploring that. I think that's what we continue to have to do.
Thank you. That concludes our first round. In the second round, each candidate will ask one question to the opponent of his choice. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask the question, 60 seconds to respond, 30 seconds for a rebuttal. Bubba, you get the first question.
Craig, I want to know where you get your information regarding solar as a mandate and regarding solar as not one of the cheapest sources of generation that we have on the marketplace today.
Well, first, the information I obtained comes right from the PSC's press release. It goes in and says that Georgia Power, it requires that Georgia Power include in its IRP an additional 520 megawatts of new solar generation. even the people in the solar industry, for instance, I have a letter here from Greenovations that sent a letter to the Jefferson City School Board. Even in their documentation, when they go through their timeline, it says that the PSC voted to require Georgia Power to include an additional 525 megawatts. So that is where the term mandate comes from. It is basically from what everybody else is saying, with the exception of the 3 people on the PSC that voted for it. As far as the power goes, the fact of the matter is, it is more than twice as expensive as what we have today. And that's just flat out economics. And I don't think that it's good for Georgians to add that kind of price to our supply.
Rebuttal?
Well, number one, so you're saying that when Georgia Power submits its integrated resource plan, this commission is supposed to rubber stamp it and send it on its way. That's what the commission's for. The commission is to have input into it. This 525 megawatts was debated, was adopted, and became a partnership with the Georgia Power Company. It is not a mandate.
Doug, the second question goes to you.
Mr. McDonald, the Public Service Commission has a budget of roughly $9 million and has approximately 80 employees. What can you tell us what role you've played over the past 6 years in the supervising the agency?
Well, number one, we have just a little over 70 employees. We've been cut by the state budget considerably. We did get one new position because of the role we've got to play over the next few years with Plant Vogtle 3 and 4 coming online, and our staff is taxed to death with that project. The second thing is Commissioner Everett and I, in order to keep staff, we combine our staff. We have one assistant that works for both of us. That's saved, when you put the numbers to that, it's about $70,000 a year that he and I have saved the state as far as having a person sitting outside my office and person sitting at his office. She sits in his office, we communicate, she does my work for me as well as she does it for him. That's what you call conservative Republican commission that we are looking forward to and will continue to do.
And Craig, now it is your turn to question one of your opponents.
I get a rebuttal.
Rebuttal, apologize.
That's all right. I don't believe it's very conservative to take a full-time taxpayer job from the citizens that pay $116,000 a year and not show up at half the time. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported that Mr. McDonald showed up to work about 40% of the time. His colleagues who are on the commission currently show up about 70% of the time. That's not fair to the ratepayers of this state, the taxpayers of this state. If you're going to get elected to a full-time job, you should be at the Atlanta office full-time. Now, I understand there's business to be made outside of the office, and that's why I'd like to see that if someone's going to be outside the office, they need to certify on an affidavit who they met with and what they were doing and whether it was PSC business.
Time's up. Okay, thank you. And Craig, now it's your turn to question one of your opponents.
And my question will be for Commissioner McDonald. At the Dublin High School solar groundbreaking last year, you said that sun energy is free. You went on to tell that the Commerce Kiwanis Club in April that at Dublin High School, building a solar power system does make financial sense. My question, how can you describe spending $300,000 a year for the next 25 years on solar to offset $100,000 in power bills as financial sense or free energy from the sun?
Well, number one, the Dublin project, of course, was a project that the school adopted itself. It's a 1.1 megawatt school project, and they have a contract, what's called a PPA contract, a peak performance contract, with the Georgia Power Company, and they are selling that power during the summer months when the school's not in session, and that will go on the grid to take care of peak power demands, and they're selling that to the company, power company, for 13 cents a kilowatt.
And once again, they are still spending $300,000 a year to basically save $100,000 in utility costs.
The Public Service Commission did not write that contract. It was done by the school board in Lawrence, Dublin County. It's a program that they adopted themselves.
Rebuttal.
Thank you. Unfortunately, it's something that you've used and advocated for all over the state, and you were at the groundbreaking advocating for it at that particular time.
I was, and I'll be at one in Davisburg, Georgia on Friday this week.
And you also took the time to go up to Washington, D.C. and talk about objects just as this. things that hurt taxpayers in the long run are not things that we on the Public Service Commission should be advocating for.
Thank you, thank you. We will now go to our third final round. In this round, the panelists will ask a question to the candidate of his or her choice until we run out of time. I'll determine when a rebuttal is appropriate. David Shapiro, you get the first question.
Over the last 5 years, a period in which the state economy was the worst it's been perhaps since the Great Depression, the PSC signed off on Georgia Power rate hikes in 2010 and 2013 that sent average residential bills from about $90 per month to about $120 per month. Georgia Power was also allowed to continue collecting a guaranteed profit margin of more than 11% during that time. Considering the state was going through record high unemployment over those years, and many were struggling to avoid foreclosure, do you stand by voting in favor of those rate hikes? And do you think that was appropriate?
Well, of course, you know, in your research, and you're very much aware of it, that over 60% of those increases were because of the EPA and demands that they put on our generation system, i.e. scrubbers, bagging for our coal plants. We have a diminishing old system of coal generation in our state. In fact, we have over 12 on the drawing board for decommissioning over the next 5 or 6 years. And so when you do that, yes, I stand by that, because there are two things. We're still 15% below the national average. We reduced the ROE for the Georgia Power Company in the last rate case. We raised the benefits for the people that are deprived by $4 a month, giving them an increase in their subsidies there. And we have the most reliable and affordable electricity in anywhere around.
Thank you. Margaret, your question.
I'd like to ask, could I ask all three?
Yeah, you may.
All three of you. The Consumers Utility Council's office was defunded in 2008. Do you think that office is needed today?
Let's start with Parker.
Yes, the office is needed, and I believe it should be refunded back to the levels that it was when it was replaced.
I believe that anything that you put in needs to be evaluated. Things that need to be taken out need to be evaluated. Things are done for a reason or purpose, and you need to make sure that whatever that reason or purpose is still true. I would say, from what I've seen, it needs to be put back in, but I believe it needs to be reevaluated to make sure that the purpose that it was put in for continues going forward to be what Georgians need.
Thank you.
We can add agencies on top of agencies in state government. The nice thing about it, we have the private sector that sits in, that are intervenors in rate cases, from the industrials to the Sierra Club to others down the line. And they do a great job in presenting their particular cases to the Public Service Commission and dissecting the rate case in itself. And I, as a conservative, and you can't continue to spend without raising taxes. You can't spend money unless you develop the money. So I'd say that we have a good plan now. I am responsible for the consumer just as much as I have a fiduciary responsibility by law to the power company. And I accept that responsibility to the consumer. I am a consumer myself, and that's where I'll be down the road, and I'll stand on my record for that.
Dave Williams, your question?
I'd like to also ask all three candidates to respond to this. Some states have adopted renewable portfolio standards requiring utilities to meet certain thresholds for development of renewable energy. Should Georgia follow that example?
I'll answer first. No, because basically what that does is give the Public Service Commission the ability to pick winners and losers in the marketplace. By having the PSC try to select which energy sources they think are going to be used in the future, I'd rather let the marketplace take care of that. So no, I don't think the PSC needs to set any target rates as to what Georgia Power needs to use, whether 5% of the portfolio is from solar or whatever else. I think we should let Georgia Power handle that.
Okay, Craig, next.
I agree with my colleague that it should not be done. I would say that we as Georgians need to make our decisions based on economic and scientific principles, not what feels good. And a lot of other states have done things that frankly have hurt their ratepayers in pretty significant ways. We are blessed here in Georgia to have an abundant coal and nuclear, so we have some of the lower rates in the country. Putting in mandates like this, not only does it pick winners and losers, but it also puts us in a position where the ratepayer is the one who is ultimately going to pay the price for some of these things that don't meet the scientific or economic principles.
Thank you, Bubba.
Dave, I've been asked that question many times over the last 5.5 years, and no is the answer then, and no is the answer tomorrow. We do not need that when we can have volunteer programs and we can work collectively together, and we will meet those goals that we establish ourselves as we move along with the experience and with the economy and with the technology that becomes available as we move along.
Thank you. Jonathan, your next question?
Well, this would be for all. This would be for everyone. Last year, Georgia Power proposed applying a tariff for new solar customers, $22 per month. Georgia Power argued it was to cover the cost of backup electricity when those panels aren't working. The proposal was ultimately dismissed by the commission. But Oklahoma just recently passed a similar tariff. Do you think a solar tariff would ever be appropriate here in Georgia?
And let's start with Craig this time.
No, I don't believe it would be. I believe that what we need to do is set up a market for those that want to use solar where they pay the rate as it should be. In other words, a peak rate costs more than an off-peak rate does. I believe that sets up a market where they can put a business case together to put solar to good use on a private scale. Unfortunately, I understand where Georgia Power is coming from. We have the same problem in Hall County with sewer. There's a capacity that you own because it's your roof, but I don't believe in putting that mandate or tariff on to the customer at this particular point in time or really in the future.
Let's go to Bubba.
We did not, as you said, Jonathan, we did not accept that position. We have net metering in Georgia, whereby if you decide to put a solar system on your home and it produces, the power company will buy your excess, comes back. That's the approach to take. And you consider some of the reasons that you might want to have that cost in there is because they say the tax on the system, but when you're using the system less, it lasts longer. So no, we're going to continue just like we've got it right now, and I don't see any change. Thank you.
And Duncan.
Actually, I do believe the tariff would be reasonable. I think that's one of the things that Georgia Power has a point on. Otherwise, the solar users would just have a free ride onto the system. Now, we can argue whether $23 is too high or too low, but I think as just a general point, I think a tariff is reasonable because you have a free ride.
Margaret, let's go to you with another round of questions.
This is for Commissioner McDonald. Why did you vote to delay reviewing construction costs for Vogel until...
I'm sorry?
Why did you vote to delay reviewing construction costs for Plant Vogel until they're built in 2018?
We don't delay the review. We're reviewing right now. We review quarterly what we have taken into consideration. There have been excerpts of cost overrun, and we have not identified those cost overruns and will not identify those cost overruns as long as there's litigation between the company which manages for Oglethorpe and manages for the municipals and for the Georgia Power. There is litigation going on, and it would be, in my opinion, kind of getting the cart before the horse if we set some figure out there that might be prudent or imprudent. And so I think we've got to wait till we see what it is. We're paying the bills as they go that are identified, and we have the construction monitor's report every quarter this year.
Thank you. David Williams, question?
I think I'm going to shift gears over to telecommunications for a minute. There have been some efforts in the General Assembly in recent years to phase out the Universal Access Fund, a state subsidy that helps independent telephone companies in rural areas to meet their legal obligations to provide landline service. The argument's basically been that the technological innovation, that's no longer relevant, it's not needed anymore. For each candidate, how do you stand on that?
Let's start with you, Doug.
Yes. I actually think that's a good idea. I think they're correct in the fact that landlines, while they will always still be around, I think are being less prevalent than they ever have before. I think we are seeing a huge switch to mobile, and I don't believe that the Universal Access Fund is as needed as it was maybe 20 or 30 years ago when everyone had a landline. So yes, I agree with phasing that out.
Bubba, let's go to you next.
Well, a person that has a home is guaranteed a phone if they want one. This is the same way that electricity was. That's why the REAs were developed over time. We have about 13 independent telephone companies in our state. And these are not like in downtown Atlanta where you've got 800 homes in one small subdivision or 3,000 homes in one tower downtown. But the only access that some of these people have are those landlines, because we don't have total cell towers all over this state. Georgia's a big state, and there are pockets in this state, even where I live, that you can't get cell. So the small universal service fund goes to help make sure that those people out there, just as the same thing that where we pay Social Security and we pay for welfare, food stamps, and we go all of it is subsidized by somebody. It's not free. Somebody's paying for it. It's working right now. Technology may change down the road, but right now it's a good thing and we need to keep it.
And Craig?
There's been some abuse in the fund, documented in the past. I think there were parties funded by the fund. I think we have to, as the Public Service Commission, we're the ones responsible to make sure that those dollars are appropriately used, and we need to do that. We need to audit the fund going back several years. But I would go a step further and say I do believe it's needed, but I would like to see it actually grown. I believe it ought to be grown to broadband. Now, this is something that has to be done through the state legislature, but everywhere that I'm going, especially in rural areas, a lot of them have cell phones, a lot of them may have a landline, but very few of them have reliable broadband service. And really, that's where the information tomorrow is going to be delivered, is over your broadband service. So if I were elected to Public Service Commission, what I would like to do is work with my state legislature to try and expand that fund so we can get broadband service in rural areas.
And I'm going to move on to the next question. Let's go to Jonathan Shapiro.
All right, well, let's stay on phone service here. This is about Lifeline phone service. Recently, a federal court has barred the state from implementing a $5 monthly fee on Lifeline phone service. It was a controversial vote at the PSC. Commissioner McDonald, you voted in favor of that $5 monthly fee. It would be the first such monthly fee in the country. Now, Lifeline, for those unfamiliar, it's a federal program originally created by President Reagan. It's aimed at making sure that the poor have basic emergency phone service. Commissioner McDonald, you argued that it was an effort to cut down fraud and abuse in the program. That's despite two fellow public service commissioners and advocates that called it an attack on the poor and said that the fraud and abuse was being addressed by the federal government and within the phone industry. Do you stand by that vote for the $5 monthly fee despite the legal challenge now, and there's been an injunction by a federal judge? Do you stand by that decision? And then for the challengers, I'd like to know where you stand on that $5 monthly Lifeline fee.
The Lifeline program was started, and those people that own landlines that have a lifetime telephone paying $5 a month for their service. Those that have landlines, that don't have a cell tower in their area that you get. The abuse was there. The abuse was running rampant, and it was being done by some of the telecommunication companies out of Mexico, et cetera, et cetera. And what has happened because of the action that I took, as well as two other commissions took, I stand by that to answer your question, and I accept the court's decision. That's why we delayed it until October before implementation, to let the courts have a chance to rule on it. But what has happened since then, the companies themselves have started policing themselves, and they're doing a great job, and now they're cross-referencing anytime anybody applies for one of these Lifeline phones. There's been major reduction in that. Now, they are out there, but you know who's paying for them? We're all paying for them. They're not free.
Thank you.
I agree that a $5 charge for that kind of phone would have been appropriate. Unfortunately, the courts felt otherwise, and we're going to abide by the ruling. I don't think in this particular situation, I have seen abuse in this situation. I used to work for the phone company and saw it on both sides, and I know people who've seen this kind of abuse all over, people who have multiple cell phones, and you find out that all of them are free. To some extent, I think the $5 charge would have helped to some extent, but it wouldn't have helped a lot. We really have to get a hold of it on the top end and make sure that the fraud doesn't occur to start with. And hopefully that will mitigate it, but I would have been good with $5.
I think the commissioners who voted for it, their heart was in the right place, but I think it was pretty obvious from the beginning that the state didn't have the ability to expand the regulations on this program. It lied with the FCC and the federal government. So I think it was pretty obvious from the start that it was a lost cause. However, I've been on the front lines as well. I'm an attorney and I've got several court-appointed clients, and it gets frustrating when you can't reach a client because they have 6 or 7 different phone numbers, and it really does happen. The program is ripe with fraud. And so I think it is something that definitely needed to be taken care of. Now, what I found interesting was that this $5 fee, I believe, went back to the phone companies. I don't understand why that was the case. If there was going to be a $5 fee, maybe put it back into a program for lower income people or something like that. So I don't think it was appropriate that we tried to pass a regulation that put money back into the coffers of phone companies who were causing the problem to begin with by signing up people who were not eligible for it or already had multiple phones.
Thank you. Margaret, back to you for your question.
Okay, this is for all three of you. Georgia law currently prevents people from having third-party financing agreements for solar. And there was a law in the a bill in the legislature that allowed that. Would you, for each of you, would you support such a law?
Well, let's start with Baba.
It has been my policy. When the General Assembly meets, if the General Assembly wants any information from the Commission, they send a messenger over there and we go over there and we do what's necessary. I want to see the legislature take its due process, as the legislature does, see what the ramifications are, the total ramifications. It's like in anything else. If you wanted to put a solar array on your home, all you've got to do, if you have a mortgage or whatever, you can borrow money on your home, put it on your home mortgage, and pay it up front and make it a part of your mortgage. Then you take advantage of the tax credit from your interest on your mortgage home. So there's ways to do it. I want the legislature to study it thoroughly, and if they want my position, then at that proper time, Margaret and I will go there and share it with them. Thank you.
And let's go to Craig.
I have a friend that's in the industry, and we actually met with one of the members of our local delegation about it just a few weeks ago to discuss not only that, but a few other of the solar initiatives that didn't come through the legislature like we had hoped. I think to some extent, I see myself as more of an advocate for the Georgian family, Georgian business, what have you. So if I see opportunities like this, I would advocate for it through my friends in the legislature. I do support the fact that you should, if you would like to put solar at your property on your business, that you should be able to do it, finance it any way you want to. I don't see why we should be, the state should be in the business saying how they do it or how they shouldn't do it.
Thank you. And Doug?
I agree. I see it as a property rights issue and a contracts issue. If citizens of the state want to actually contract with another company to lease these solar panels for their home, they should be able to do so. I believe that the legislature should take it up and should pass it. I think we should be asking why it hasn't been passed, and I think we need to look at the efforts by Georgia Power and others to keep this legislation from passing, because it is a private property rights issue, and I think the citizens of the state should be able to do that.
Thank you. Dave, we'll go to you for your third question.
This is for everybody. The U.S. Department of Energy has gotten a round of criticism just the last couple of weeks for approving $6.5 billion in loan guarantees for the Vogtle project without requiring payment of a fee to help compensate the federal government for the risk in making that loan. Do you believe that Georgia Power and its partners in the Vogtle project are getting too good a deal from the federal government at the expense of taxpayers?
Let's start with Doug.
Yes. I think they've gotten a good deal from the very get-go. I think that's one of the reasons I got in this race was because I looked at the bottom of my Georgia Power bill and saw that I was prepaying for a nuclear power plant that wasn't going to come online for years. I would love to charge my customers for any capital expenses that I have. No other small businesses can do that. Only monopolies in the state apparently can. So as ratepayers, not only are we prepaying the construction of this project, we're also on the hook for it as the federal taxpayers as well, so we get it coming and going. I think that Georgia Power has pretty much called the shots on this project from the beginning and have gotten pretty much whatever they want.
Thank you, and Craig?
I would say that there have been subsidies in the energy business ever since we had the energy business. You know, today there's subsidies on, federal subsidies on solar, there's federal subsidies on wind. There's been federal subsidies on nuclear power since nuclear power was started. Anything that will help the Georgian ratepayer in the future, I will gladly accept, because frankly the federal government is the one who is really driving up the cost of that plant as much as anybody through the EPD and the Department of Energy and what have you. So my thought is, if they want to waive a fee that doesn't get passed along to us eventually on the rate bill, I'm all for it.
First off, you've got to remember that it's not the Georgia Power Company only, it's Oglethorpe, it's the municipalities, and there is a position by Congress that these loan guarantees are available. If we can loan guarantee $6.5 billion to help the ratepayers of Georgia, I think it's just as good as we can send $1 billion to Iran for whatever the purpose is over there. And so, hey, yes, helping people of Georgia, that guarantee, the nice thing about it, that guarantee is basically guaranteed by us, the consumers, because we will be the ones that will be benefiting from nuclear power. It's long lasting, it'll be for 60 years plus, and it's one of the cheapest sources of energy that we can have, and it's just very, very, very reliable. And I think it's a good thing, Dave.
Let's go back to WABE reporter Jonathan Shapiro.
I want to go back to Vogtle, and on that issue where the deal was struck last summer between the PSC and Georgia Power / Southern Company to withhold future requests for cost overruns until the first unit is online, which looks like right now it's around 2018, about at least 18 months behind schedule. I want to know what the other candidates think about this decision, because one of the ways that the project was originally approved was that there'd be the 6-month updates on cost and the certification of cost for those 6-month periods. And that some of that was because of the first 2 Vogtle units, of them going dramatically over budget and almost bankrupt Georgia Power. I'd like to hear from the challengers what they made of that deal this summer between PSC, Georgia Power, and Southern Company, and what they would do if they were a public service commissioner in this case, in terms of controlling cost overruns, getting the schedule, making sure that the schedule, that they get some control over this schedule. But I'd like to know if you were in the position of being a public service commissioner, what you would do to control the cost overruns and what you made of that decision in July.
Let's go with you, Craig.
To some extent, the Public Service Commission did have their hands tied with Senate Bill 31 that was passed in 2009, which is what basically put that charge. I have Jackson EMC, but at least on Mr. Kidd's power bill. In that particular bill, it charged the Public Service Commission with verifying that the cost overruns were appropriate and are counted appropriately. I did not like the deal that was done that pushed that off into the future until when Reactor 3 came online. And the reason is because I felt like that the legislature, while I didn't agree with the bill when it was passed, I will say that it is still a law that was passed and signed by Governor Perdue, and we needed to follow through with it 100%. So my point is, I think that we, as a Public Service Commission, have an obligation to go through and review everything as it comes in.
Thank you.
Wait.
And Doug?
I don't think it's purely coincidental that the fewer cost reviews you have coincide with cost overruns. I think it didn't take a genius to figure out that based on the previous Plant Vogtle construction, cost overruns, plus any cost overruns for pretty much every nuclear project that's been built in America, that there was going to be cost overruns. So yes, the PSC should have regular 6-month certification checks, basically to see where things are going. Otherwise, you get what we're having right now.
Jonathan, your question was longer than we can answer for. But,
In a nutshell, cost overruns and how long?
but number one, again, I'll say it again, we have quarterly reviews on that. And we're taking that quarterly, and the appropriations that we designate for cost are a part of the initial agreement that we have with the power company. Number two is that the litigation again is an issue that's out there. We're gonna wait to see it. And number three, there's a whole different system of building plant 3 and plant 4, which goes online in 17. Number 3 does. And because we're looking at custom parts at units 1 and units 2. Now we have the AP 1000. We have 31 states in this nation that are participating in contracts that are providing parts and services for these 2 nuclear plants down there. We're the first in the nation, over 30 years before any other nuclear plants have come online, and we're leaders in that area, and we'll continue to be leaders in that area.
Thank you. And this will be our final question, and let's go to Margaret.
I have a question for everyone except for Commissioner O'Donnell. What are your qualifications to be a public service commissioner? It's a very technical job. It's a very demanding job in many ways. What do you think would make you a good candidate?
Let's start with Doug.
I think that I would be a good candidate first because I'm an attorney. I've got good experience in reading the law. Before I came down here today, I kind of looked at the official code of Georgia and noticed that we had 53 titles. The Public Service Commission, it makes up 1 title, and then I counted, I'm familiar with probably about 31 of the titles. So if I'm elected, it won't take me very long to get up to speed with the title for Public Service Commission. Also, there's no other attorneys on the commission. I think that we have a former Harvard.
Our chairman is an attorney.
Has he passed the bar exam?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, he just. Okay. Well, I would be, I guess, the first practicing attorney on the commission after Mr. Eaton passed the bar exam. But I do have an ability to explain things to people as a small law practice. I have the ability to explain the law to average people, and I think that that would qualify me for the commission.
Thank you. And Craig?
Well, first, I feel like I'm the most qualified person because I'm the only person that's actually worked in an industry that was regulated by the Public Service Commission. I worked for Bell South, and I was one of the ones that helped take them through the deregulation process. I also have a bachelor's degree from Mercer University in business. I've got a master's degree from Kennesaw State in business management. I've got 4 patents with Bell South, and where I took different concepts and brought them together to bring and have a more effective solution. I think I can bring some ideas to the Public Service Commission that will help future Georgians, help them keep their prices low. I've got some great ideas on what can be done with the current infrastructure so that we don't do these kinds of mandates that we've done in the past that are going to put upward pressure on the prices for power.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for questions. And now each candidate will have 60 seconds for a closing statement. Doug, you get the first closing statement.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all inviting us all out here tonight. It's good for the residents of Georgia to be able to hear from all of us. My name is Doug Kidd, and I'm running for Public Service Commission. During the course of this campaign so far, I visited 117 counties, and by the end of it, I plan to visit all 159 counties. And what I've seen while traveling throughout the state is that people are struggling right now. It's been a struggle for people to pay their power bills. Georgia Power has had 4 rate increases in the past 4 years, with more on the way. And what we need right now is a rate cut for the ratepayers of Georgia, and that's what I propose to do. The second thing that we need to do is have stricter ethics regulations. Currently, the lobbyists for Georgia Power and for other utilities take our commissioners out to dinner way too much. I believe that Mr. McDonald has received more than $22,000 in dinners, gifts, and trips from lobbyists in the past 5.5 years. I'd like to see that ended. I'd like to see that any outside meetings with the lobbyists be banned. I think the lobbyists, if they're going to meet with the commissioners, should do so at the Public Service Commission. Thank you.
And Craig?
Thank you for having us. It is a great opportunity for us to get together and share ideas, and I think that no matter who becomes the Republican nominee, I know that that person will be stronger because of debates like this. I'm asking for your vote. My name is Craig Lutz. I'd like to be your next Public Service Commissioner. I'm bringing some good ideas that do not hurt Georgians. The PSC is focused on the wrong side of the equation. They are looking at the supply of energy. We've already got a surplus of energy in Georgia. We need to be focused on the fuel costs in Georgia, not the energy. In a monopoly, if you increase the supply and the demand stays the same, prices just go up. Recent decisions done by the Public Service Commission are going to do nothing but increase prices so that you and I will pay more in the future. I ask for your vote, and if you'd like more information, please visit my website, www.lutzforpsc.com.
And Bubba.
Good evening again, and my name is Loring Bubba McDonald, and I have the privilege of serving the people of Georgia on the Georgia Public Service Commission. And it's a history that all you've got to do is go back and look at my record, and if we wanted to look at some of the parts. If there's an ethics issue, find one with me. I abide by the law, I abide by all the rules of ethics, and just, point it out. The second thing is about my job. I'm not in that office 40 hours a week. You got that right. I've had a district office that I paid for myself up in Turneville, Georgia, and I had tons of people that would come in and see me in my office, and I'm all over the state because the office needs to be out there with the state, not sitting behind my desk. And the third thing is I have the experience of being in business. Service business, retail hardware and building supply, serving people. Now 2 businesses that our son runs are 2 funeral homes. It's service to people, that's what it is. I'm your public servant. I appreciate serving on the Georgia Public Service Commission. I seek your vote in re-election. Vote early and vote often. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our debate. We'd like to remind voters that the primary elections will be held Tuesday, May 20th. Our thanks to the candidates and to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging tonight's debate. And for more information about the Atlanta Press Club and all of the debates they'll host this primary election season, you may visit atlantapressclub.org. I'm Lynette Sosa. Thanks for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series.